No one gets to go inside Britannic unless you're one of a very small number of elite divers who are sanctioned by the Greek government and the ship's owner. For the rest of us, what you can do though is get a small glimpse of what it must be like inside, and that's to go along the Port Promenade Deck. Last dive on the Britannic, and I bet you it's going to be the best. We're going to do the promenade run. It's one of the things we've been talking about ever since we've been here. It's where we just go inside on that first class promenade, which goes from, not far off the stern all the way through to the bridge. We're going to be going on there in a big line. There's going to be George in front, then myself, then Henry, and finally at the back Greg picking up the tail. We're going to pop out of there, then come all the way back on the top of the wreck. Reckon it's over 100 metres long, that promenade run, and then we're going to end up on the Jack Cousteau Plaque for a last photo, and then back to the shot line, and really sadly that'll be our dive done. But what a way to finish. Before you finish though, you got to start. This is us loading up the boats, heading out. It's only a short journey to Britannic, 20 minutes maybe, absolute max. By the time we get there, the shot is already in, but there's a useful reminder of some of the challenges of diving this site.
That's why we need to pay attention and stay on the line.
There isn't enough room in the boat for all four of us to get kitted up at once, so the first two get their gear sorted out and drop in. They're going to wait for us on the line, but there's definitely a bit of onus on Henry and myself at this point to get ourselves sorted out as quickly as possible and get in, because the other two don't want to be waiting round on the line for us for too long. The good news is, by this stage of the trip, Henry and myself are both pretty proficient at getting kitted up in the quickest possible time, whilst also making sure that we do everything. Last thing anybody wants to do is get in with something turned off or not fitted or anything like that. So we're in, and there you can see the two divers, George and Greg, waiting for us nicely on the line. We're going to go to them. George is just going to confirm that everybody's ready, and then we're going to head on down. I'm going to make sure my video and everything is sorted out because I don't want to miss this. And most of the video that you're going to see from this dive is from the GoPro that's mounted on the front of the scooter. I'll also intersperse it with a bit of Henry's every now and again, so you'll see some stuff of me. But this is on the GoPro now. There they are, Henry at the top. Greg has got the kind of red-orange fins, and then below him, leading the way, that is George. I'm not going to show the full descent. I'm going to skip forward every now and again. You can see here, 3 minutes into the dive, we're at 32 metres. The other divers are all in front of me. Fast forward another 3 minutes. You can see here, I've hit 60 metres. Really interesting thing is the colour of the water hasn't changed at all, and I think that just shows how much ambient light is coming down. Really unusual. Conditions I'm used to in the UK, British Isles, it would be very different round about now. Skip another couple of minutes, it's still pretty light. We're approaching 80 metres. You can just make out the shape of the wreck. The bottom of it, the hull is to my right hand side. To my left, you can just start to see some portholes, and that's going to go up to the promenade deck where we're heading. The other guys, as you can see, are putting on their Deco strobes. And this is me doing mine. One of the amazing things about this is, even though this is my third dive, when I saw the hull and I saw the scale of it, it took my breath away, just as it had on the very first dive that I did a few days before this. I don't know how many dives you need to do on Britannic before you don't get that sense of wonder and scale, but I suspect it's an awful lot. George has just given us the check there to make sure everyone's okay by circling his torch on the hull. Everybody has got their strobe set. So the next thing to do is to head up to the entrance of the promenade deck. We talked about this before we got in the water. In fact, we spent quite a long time discussing it, so everybody knew what was happening. Everyone was agreed with the plan. So it was now all about executing it. The good news is that we have George, who has probably dived the exterior of Britannic more than anybody else in existence, which of course means that we know he's going to take us there. The important part is for us to make sure that we're doing our bit. which at this moment in time essentially consists of telling George that we're okay and we're ready to move over to the wreck. Now, one thing I just draw your attention to here is first thing that Greg has just got himself briefly entangled in the shot line, but also you'll see that the shot line was laying pretty much flat against the wreck. When we come back to it later on, you'll see that position has changed a lot. And I think one of the things that does is show how strong the current can be on Britannic. But that's for later on in the dive. For now, as you can see, George is heading over towards the stern, towards the entrance to the promenade. You can see Henry's in there behind him. You can actually see the promenade deck. It's just over to the left-hand side. I can only imagine what the view out of that must have been like in the moments before the sinking, but also when the ship was just travelling around. Imagine leaving Belfast. Imagine all the places that Britannic went before it ended up here. Imagine the people who would have walked down there, the crew, but also the medical staff, wounded soldiers, all of those kind of things. It must have been an incredible number of people had travelled on that. And for me, whenever I'm wreck diving, I love the wrecks. I love seeing the metal and the fixtures and the fittings, but I also always think about the stories and the people. Now, that was a first class promenade that we're going to go on. There's also a second class one, which is just where Henry, who's the guy with the twin set on, he's just going over the top of that. So it wasn't just the first class passengers. Not that Britannic had first class passengers, but it was meant to be first class passengers. Everybody had the opportunity, or certainly the first and second class people had the opportunity to take in the air, to take in the view. No idea what happened to third class people. Perhaps they weren't fortunate enough. One of the things about making these videos on Britannic is they are watched by, I think, a lot of ocean liner enthusiasts, the kind of people who know lots of details about Titanic and other liners. And some of the comments I get from those people are absolutely fascinating. They tell me stuff I don't know. They correct me when I say things wrong. So if you're one of those people and I've said something that's not right, or you want to add a bit to it, then please just stick it in the comments. It would be great to hear it. As you can see, just starting to go along now. Henry knew that I was going in second, so he's moved out of the way to leave me to go in. And the reason is because I've got the video on the front of my scooter, and therefore the view is that I'm probably going to get the best footage. From time to time, I'm going to cut to Henry's footage, as you can see here. So that's him videoing me. And in a moment, you're going to see I spot something interesting, and I turn my scooter and point it downwards to have a video inside. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that I'm looking into these rooms thinking, I would really, really love to go in there. This is back to my footage. You can see following George along. In a moment, I'm going to see those rooms. In fact, George is just going over the top of them now, so I will kind of weave my way through a bit of stuff that's fallen down from the roof. There's all sorts of bits and pieces. Later on, I'm going to show you some of the light fittings. There's pipe work, there's cables, all sorts of bits and pieces, bits of medical equipment, trolleys, all sorts of things. But you can see there, looking into that room, clearly I'm not going to get in there, but that is super inviting. And no doubt just up here somewhere there is going to be a door. I'm going to resist temptation, but the temptation is definitely there. And you can see me just looking down into things. Now, you're not going to be able to get into that one. There's too much stuff in the way, but somewhere up here is going to be one. You can see those cables that I talked about. You can also see all sorts of other bits and pieces that have fallen down. You can see where the teak decking would have been. The wood, the teak has gone, but the caulking is still there. That would have been in between the timber just to give it a nice smooth surface. I think one of the interesting things is how the space that there is to walk gets wider and thinner. I have no idea why that is. Perhaps it must have been something to do with what was inside. You can also see, I think, that there's gaps like this one off to the left-hand side, going down to the promenade deck below it, the second class one. Once again, all of these things I would love to explore. We're just really scratching the surface. I think I've said that on all the videos. I would love to come back and do this again, maybe do it from the other end, or just do it a bit slower, maybe do it in chunks, spend some more time underwater. This is really, these 3 dives that we've done are just familiarization, not even familiarizing myself. I've just jumped back. This is Henry's video, so you can see me at the beginning of that sequence where I talked about the promenade deck getting thinner. You can see some of those holes that I mentioned. There's the first one there. There's the second one just coming up in front of me. I think it's useful to see it from behind to see what I'm doing. There you go. You can see me pointing the scooter down. You've seen the video that I got from doing that. I think the other thing with this is you can see, even though it feels like you're inside the wreck, it feels like you're penetrating it. You're not really, because pretty much almost any time you could exit above. There is some areas where it's a bit more tricky than others, but most of the time you're going to be able to get up there without too many problems. Back to me again. You can see George is keeping the pace going. He knows how long this is. He knows the amount of time it's going to take us to get to the end and then all the way back to the shot. So part of his role is just to make sure that we do keep cracking on. You can see Henry is quite close behind me. I'm the one who's being slow. And it's because I'm just trying to take it all in, trying to store these sights into my brain. It's one of the reasons why it's so good for me anyway to have all this video footage, because I couldn't compute it. I couldn't absorb it all. So the opportunity to put it in my brain is what the videos give me. Probably see there's a light fitting. I just had a quick look at it. I've seen fittings to that or similar to that on the Lusitania, not in any sort of position like that, just lying on the floor. So it's fascinating to see them in situ. And once again, to imagine what this must have been like at night with all those light bulbs on. Once again, you can see there's a little hole in the floor there. The other thing I think you can start to see is debris on at the bottom there. Now, I am told that those are, or believed to be, the remains of beds or trolleys or some of the medical stuff. I think probably on a normal liner you would have got benches and stuff out here, so people who were walking down the deck, if they wanted to, they could stop and have a rest. Those, I assume, are either buried under all those shells or weren't fitted to Britannic. Instead, it had all this medical kit, and you can imagine how good it would have been for patients to sit out on the deck, particularly in the Mediterranean, getting the sea air, getting the sun on themselves. You can imagine the scene, or certainly I can imagine the scene, and that's why all those beds and stuff are here. Once again, you can see on the right all those cables and stuff. Anybody who has seen the video that I did with Richie Cola, where he shared some of the video from inside, you can see tons more of those cables. And I think it's one of the things that was maybe relatively unusual at this time. Oh, just before I continue talking about that, you can see I think that's a water fountain outside the door. Once again, you can imagine maybe people coming out and using that water fountain. Might have been a hand basin, I don't know. There is another hand basin later on. In fact, there we go. You can just see it coming into view now. No idea why there was a basin out on the deck. Maybe there was a toilet inside or something. I don't know, but there it is anyway. It's clearly a hand basin. Don't know what it's for. No doubt somebody who knows far more about these ships than I do will put something in the comments and will educate me. There's also a window there, so maybe that was a toilet. Don't know. Maybe there was a toilet inside and you could wash your hands when you came out. Who knows? George, as you can see there, is cracking on, and I'm definitely feeling a bit of pressure to follow him. If you're following my dive computer, you can see I've been underwater about 17 minutes here. Don't know what that is. Maybe that is a radiator. Not sure why it'd be on the outside of the ship, but that there is definitely a fan. Once again, don't know necessarily why you would have that there. There's a whole load more windows, slightly different to the windows that you often see. The sliding ones, the ones that rotate, those are just kind of normal windows. Another radiator there perhaps, another door, all super inviting. One of the things that George briefed us about was he said right at the end of the deck there are 2 doors and they're quite tight to get through. He said so, and you can see he's just got to them now. The technique he advised was to try and go through almost at a bit of an angle with your head pointing down, and once your head was through, you then kind of brought your bum and your fins down and then came through the rest of it. So this is what I am going to do now. I've got my scooter through first. That is the easy bit, and I have to now get the rest of my body through. I was surprised it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be, and as you can see here, managed to get through without too many problems. What I then thought it would be good to do would be to turn around and get some footage of Henry coming through. He was also super swift. As you can see, he's got himself through probably even quicker than I did. That's pretty impressive when you consider he's got a chest mount rebreather and he's got those big twins on his back. George is waiting for us outside because, of course, it's not just me, it's not just Henry. Right the way at the back somewhere is Greg. He needs to be getting out. He's probably got the best configuration for getting through this. He's got the front mount rebreather, but then his bailout cylinders are all side mounted, so that probably makes it a lot easier for getting through a tight space like that. This is Henry. You can see that his kit makes him quite wide, but it's a configuration that he put a lot of time and thought into. If you haven't watched his video about why he chose this setup, it's absolutely fascinating. Very different paradigm to what I am used to, and absolutely fascinating. It was one of the great things about this trip is, you know, I've done a lot of diving with people with other rebreathers, other setups, but I've never really spent much time with people on front mount rigs, so it was absolutely fascinating to understand them. And I even managed to do a couple of dives on the GBM, the generic breathing machine. I'll cover those in another video. You see Henry's flashing away at me, and the reason is because he wanted a little bit of video showing his Ork-Torch setup and how good it is. This is the Ork-Torch ZD710. He's got it wrist mounted, you can see there. And one of the really nice things about it is you can change the focus on the beam. So if you want something like this, which is super narrow and can be used in exactly the way that he's using it for signaling, that works really well. What you can also do is change the focus the other way and it turns it into a video light. He doesn't have a video light, so everything he has taken, all the video of me, was either shot using ambient light or that ZD710 as a video light. It's a really impressive bit of kit. I've had the opportunity to use one as well. Really like it, especially the soft Goodman handle that Henry is using. Wrist mounted, works super well. You can see that George has realised that everyone's out, so Henry's just to my right, Greg is just underneath me. You saw the front of his scooter, and therefore we are cracking on back to the Cousteau Plaque, which is 70, 80, 90 metres away from where we are now. We want to get a photo there, and then George wants to get us back to the shot line. You can see the TTS is 92 minutes, which is already, we've got an hour and a half of deco to do. We're at 90 metres. This is not far off one of the shallowest parts of the wreck. We're just back from the bridge here, so that the funnels would be off to the area to my left here. You can see Greg's poked off. I'm absolutely fascinated. In fact, there is one of the entrance to the funnels just below me there. I know that this is my last dive on Britannic, certainly in the foreseeable future. All I want to do is maximise my time, maximise the opportunity that I get to see stuff. So you can see here, I've actually dropped a bit further down. Looking up there, you can see some of the lifeboat davits. You can see, looking up at the wreck there, it's incredible. I actually want to go deeper than this. I've not been to the seabed on this trip. I would really like to do that, but I don't get the opportunity to do it because As I think I've mentioned in some of my other videos, this is about team diving, this is about us sticking together, and that has got to be the most important thing, rather than me doing what I want to do on the wreck. That kind of hurts a bit though. I am feeling it a bit at this point, but I know I've got to be good, I've got to play nicely, I've got to go and join the rest of them. And there you go, Henry is just there above the top of the wreck. One of the things this does result in though is a rather nice bit of footage. So there's Greg, and you can see me just coming up over the side of Britannic there, giving a nice OK signal, and I love that bit of video. Back to mine though, there they all are waiting for me, possibly wagging their fingers a bit, going, come on Dom, what are you up to? We need to be cracking on, we need to go and find this Cousteau Plaque, because it's quite a long way back on the top of the wreck, even though it's only 83 metres. That's still deep, of course, and we're still racking up the deco time. Anybody who's watching my TTS there, you can see it. If you see the graph in the bottom, you can also see that big step where I've probably come up over 10 metres. Here we go, heading along. Everyone's gunning it on the scooters. This is quite good fun actually, just blasting along the side of Britannic. Left to my own devices, I'd have probably gone back into the promenade deck and blasted all the way back along there. But that wasn't the plan. That wasn't what we agreed to do. This is what we said. As we go along, I think one of the interesting things you can see are the changes to the exterior of the promenade deck. So where we are here, it's only small windows. A bit further on, in fact you can just start to see it coming into view here, it gets much wider. There's also that curve there. Don't really know why that is. Does that align with some of the changes that we've seen inside where it goes thinner or wider? Were those sections reserved for other people? I don't know. Once again, I'm sure that somebody out there who is watching this video will know, and I'd love to hear the answer in the comments. Moving along, you can see more of the lifeboat davits. Those are the big things on the side. They would have been used when Britannic sunk. When it hit that mine, as it was going down, they would have launched the lifeboats. Some of those lifeboats were the ones that got dragged into the port prop and killed the people who died. The only casualties from the sinking were when lifeboats were launched too early and ended up getting chopped up. There's the famous story of Violet Jessup, who was claims that she was hit by one of the props. She survived, albeit later on in life they diagnosed her with a fractured skull. She also had the misfortune to be involved. She was on Titanic when it sunk. She was also involved when HMS Hawke hit Olympic. So the 3 Olympic class liners, she was on them all and was involved in some of the most significant incidents in their history. I'm still not entirely sure whether she was extremely lucky or extremely unlucky, or possibly, quite possibly both. You can see that George has stopped. He is shining his torch on the Cousteau Plaque, which was put on the wreck of Britannic by Kevin Gurr. It's not secured in any way, so it has fallen off in the past and people have recovered it and put it where it is now. But we wanted a photo, pretty much the last thing that we did on Britannic, all 3 of us on the trip with that plaque. We thought it was a nice way to finish. One of the problems with organising underwater photos for anyone who's ever done it is they are a bit of a pain. That's even more of a pain when you've got 3 people carrying all the kind of gear that we've got. And you're going to see in a moment, I'm going to switch from my video to Henry's video. He's in the process of handing it over to George, and is then going to come and join us because, of course, he wants to be in it. I've just shut off the GoPro video, otherwise I'd get loads of GoPro video of the side of the hull. We did talk about how we were going to do this photo before we got in the water, and I think that's a really important thing to do. It meant that we were all aligned, we all understood what was going to happen, and that made it easier to do, because the last thing you want to be doing at this depth, at this point in the dive, you can see a TTS is up to 2 hours, is to be messing around. Switch to Henry's video there. He's on the left, heading over towards me. You can see Greg is in the middle, the inventor of the GBM rebreather that Henry and himself are using, also the owner of Scubatron. There is me on the right. We're trying to get ourselves all in together. It's not the easiest thing in the world. Henry did get a fairly decent still out of this, so that is quite good. And there, George is illuminating the plaque. There we go. That is the moment. That is the photo. And that's me pointing at it, just in case anybody is in any doubt where it was. Right, photo is done. TTS, 125 minutes. We've been on the wreck, I guess, for 20 minutes. We probably hit the bottom about minute 8. So that's not long at all. But that's the reality of this kind of diving, is you've just got to suck it up. You're not going to get much bottom time. You're going to spend a long time in the water. George is off. Next thing to do is head back to the shot line. You can see I've clocked it there. I can see the strobes. One of the things I think that confused us all a bit is that the current had picked up, and when that happened, it lifted the strobes, it lifted the shot line off the wreck quite a lot. So we were all expecting those strobes to be much lower down, but they weren't. So it's incredible, really, that in just 20 minutes, the current has picked up quite a lot. As I head up, you can see there, I'm just having a last look at Britannic. I can also see the other divers who are a bit lower down than me, but I think that's really useful for understanding the scale of the wreck. Also, it shows how great the visibility is. I don't get to dive in vis like this very much, but it blows my mind when I do. It's so nice. It's such an improvement on what I normally do. Next item on the agenda, as always, is to take our strobes off the line. These 3 strobes here, one of them is George's, one of them is Henry's, one of them is Greg's. I use my double strobes, which are just a bit further up the line. I think they're going to come into view in a moment. One of the things I get asked quite a lot is, how do I secure them to the line? The piece of metal that I use there is called a John clip, so it's exactly the same thing that you would use on a John line, but it works really well for securing strobes as well. You can see Henry is keen to get up the shot line, and one of the mistakes I think that people starting technical diving often make is they still assume that a slow ascent is a good ascent. That's kind of what you're taught in recreational diving. I can tell you it's absolutely not the case for this. You need to get off the bottom quickly. You need to get up to your deco stops as quickly as you can. Ideally at the maximum rate that your computer will allow you to do, or if you're feeling particularly cheeky, as fast as you feel as though you can. One of the things I do is I do relatively rapid ascents from the bottom up until about half the distance from the bottom to my first deco stop. I then go to the computer's maximum rate of ascent from then to the first deco stop. People will have their own opinions on that. All I would say is it's something that works well for me and it makes sense. You stay down deep, you are going to be on-gassing, you're going to incur more deco. So don't do that. Get off the bottom, get up, and the rate of change of pressure nearer the bottom is much less than it is closer to the surface. So that's the kind of rationalization in my head. You can see I am not hanging around. I'm getting up nice and quickly. You can also see that Henry above me is doing the same. The other 2 guys, there's Greg, he's following behind me, and below him is George as well. They're also coming up at a reasonable rate of knots, because we know that you need to get up shallow, otherwise you're just going to be on gassing. You can probably see my TTS is 131 minutes here. It was 128 when I got to my strobes. So even though I've come up quite a long way, my TTS has only just started reducing. Skip forward, you can see 50 odd meters there, and it's time to change my PO2 to 1.5. That's not far off my first deco stop. You can see the impact it has instantly on my TTS, which went from 130 to about 114, which is a pretty decent saving and well worth having. I'm now further up the line, above the point where the lazy shot, as they call it, joins on the main shot line. I'm looking up there and you can see the Deco station above me. It's almost triangular shape. The point of the triangle is joined onto the main shot line, and this line that's here with me is the lazy shot and goes up to the middle of the Deco trapeze. I'm now on the Deco trapeze, so you can see really clearly the triangular shape. The apex of that triangle is on the shot line. You can see the lazy shot line in the middle of the Deco bar. That goes down to about 20 odd meters, where we get our first gas as a 50% mix down there. That's where the support divers normally turn up. You can see here on the Deco trapeze, there's a 100% mix hanging on that cylinder. There's also those two lines that hang down, and they've got weights on the end of them. The whole thing keeps the trapeze stable, even when there's quite a lot of current, as there is at the moment. Just next to me there, that's George. He's on his scooter, scootering into the current. He's just checking how much Deco I've got left. I'm the last up diver other than George. The other two are surfaced already. He does this, he stays in the water, makes sure everyone has cleared their Deco, and then he is the last person out. And this is it, my Deco is now cleared. You can see one of the support divers is in the water. They're just getting ready to disassemble the whole system. They'll go down the bottom, they'll release the lazy shot, and then the whole thing will get recovered onto the second boat. For me, this is quite a sad moment, because this is the last dive in Greece. This is, it's been a great trip, fantastic expedition. I've made so many friends. I've had such a good time. I've dived one of the absolute bucket list wrecks. But as always with any sort of diving, you can't be too emotional, because there's always something to do. So reflection will come later. What I need to do now is get myself sorted and get out of the water. You can see the conditions are a little bit lumpy. We've had better, we've had worse on this trip, so it's not going to be a problem. Especially with all these people on the boat ready and willing to give you all the help you need to get out of the water. Loads of kit to get off, scooters, cylinders. First of all, my dive voke that I've been watching while on Deco stops.
Hi there.
Oh man, last dive on the Britannic, but what a pelter. Absolutely brilliant. Down along the promenade deck, out in the area kind of by the bridge, all the way along the top, Cousteau Plaque, and then back up with a little bit of current once again, just to keep us fascinated. So great 3 dives on the Britannic, absolutely wonderful. Just need to come back now.
Yes, you are.
So that was the last of my 3 dives on the Britannic. If you haven't watched the other ones, I'm going to put the links in the comments. I've got a whole load of videos on liners, unidentified shipwreck, a whole load of things which I hope you will take the time to have a look at and enjoy. But for now, I am Deep Wreck Diver Dom Robinson. Hope you've enjoyed my video, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next one.